Good morning, kids. It's Charlie Craven back again with the latest addition to our YouTube channel. And what I'm going to tie for you today is Tim's Hopper. This is a new for 2025 pattern from Umpqua Feather Merchants from Tim Drummond, who guides up in North Park, runs a great guide service. He's a great guide, and always ties really cool flies that are simple, sort of guide style flies, but simple and effective. And this is exactly one of those, sort of reminiscent of a chubby, but a little bit more, kind of harkens back. If you know what a old club sandwich looked like, this is sort of like that as well. But it's got some hackle on it too, which makes it appeal to me. I like the idea of that hackle on there, sort of old school. So I'm gonna tie one of these up for you. Let me get my lights a little adjusted here so I can see. There we go. So I'm going to tie you this yellow version, and of course you can tie this in whatever colors you like, but let me pop this one out. I'm going to put a, this is a Tiemco 5263, size 10 in the vise, so that's a 3x long nymph hook. So it's a stout hook, but that'll help to make the fly ride hook point down. It always lands right because of that stouter hook. A lot of foam flies I tie on a heavier hook as well, and Tim does too, and that's a smart decision. It also holds up to those big fat fish that we all think we're going to catch. So I'm going to tie this with 72 denier golden yellow Magpie materials thread. You could do this with 110 denier also. Somebody just asked me the other day why I use such fine thread on foam flies and things like that. And generally speaking, as a rule, I try to use the smallest thread I can get away with, just so that I don't have extra bulk. It just keeps things cleaner. By all means, on a fly like this, you could use 110 denier and be just fine. But I'm going to use a 72 because, hey, I'm just really good at this. So what I did there is I started the thread about 1/3 of a shank length back from the hook eye. And at this point, I'm going to tie in 4 or 5 strands of red Krystal flash. And I'm going to catch these up here at the front. And I'm going to wrap back over. I'm trying to keep them on top of the hook. Wrap back over them all the way to the bend. Now you don't want to get around the curve of the bend here. You want to stay up on top of the hook. And I'm just going to cut those off into a short little stub. Again, sort of owing to the old school, the old Joe's hopper and Dave's hopper had a little red hackle tail. That's where that red comes from. And if you pay attention, most hoppers have a little red on them. So that is just one of those things that you can do that adds a little bit of red where it should be. Now, I've got a piece of 2mm thin fly foam, and I've cut it to a point, like an arrow point. And I just noticed when I held it up there on the camera, I've got kind of a weird edge on this piece. See if I can't square that up a little bit. Not sure if that helped or not, but kind of bang that up. That wasn't the straightest piece I've ever cut. Let's cut a new piece. So I'm going to cut a strip of this yellow foam that's about as wide as the gap of the hook. A long bladed pair of scissors works very nicely for that. Okay, so like so, about as wide as the gap of the hook, just shy of the gap of the hook. And I'm going to cut the end to a point. So turn that around, kind of line those up. That's not super pointed, but that's close enough to pointed. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to lay this, the base of that point right at the bend of the hook so that the tip is just about even with the ends of the tail. And I'll cinch that down with one turn and put 3 or 4 more over the top of it. So we've just got a short little stub tail there. I'll move my lights. We got a little hot there, so I'm going to back those off a bit. Now I'm going to lift this piece of foam up. I'm going to come forward back up to where I started my thread. Now at this point, I'm going to take another strip of foam. And I want this one to be about 2 by 1.5, 2 by 2 millimeters. So just a thin little strip. And I just cut it off the side. It's not something you need to buy. It's just something that you can cut off the side of the sheet. I'm going to tie this in. I'm going to slide this piece of foam back, and I'm going to tie this in right where I started the thread. And I'm going to wrap back over it all the way to the bend, and then bring my thread forward again. Now at this point, I'm going to hunt for my piece of Tippet material, which is not here anymore. So you're going to have to hang on just a second. Stand by. I'll be right back. Don't move. Oh look, I found it. So anyway, this is 4X Tippet material, and I'm going to tie this in here on my near side, again right where I started the body. I'm going to wrap over it to the bend. Then I'll bring the thread back up to the starting point. I'll clip that piece of mono back in my material clip so it's out of the way. So now I'm going to take, and you can see this back end is going to move around a little bit because we've got no glue on that. We're going to take care of that later. I'm going to take this thinner piece of foam, and I'm going to wrap it around the hook as I come forward here, and kind of overlapping as I go, kind of build a little bit of a taper to build the underbody. And then I'll tie that off with a couple tight turns and nip that extra thread out. Like so. You can see that foam makes a nice smooth body. Now, one of the things on you see this on so many foam flies where somebody will cut a strip of foam and wrap it. That doesn't add a ton of flotation. You've sort of crushed by pulling tight on the foam. You sort of crush the air bubbles out of it. So I try not to pull too tight on it to begin with. But most of our flotation is going to come from the other foam on this fly. This is just a way to build a perfectly matching and really nicely shaped body. So now I'm going to take my thread and I'm going to come all the way up to the hook eye and back again to the front edge of the body, just so I'm not tying on bare shank. And I'm going to take a brown hackle feather that should be, by the time I wrap it over this foam body, just about to the gap of the hook. I like mine a little short, so that one's just about right. This will work just fine. And I'm going to strip the butt end. So I've just got a bare stem there. And I'm going to tie that in at the front edge of the body here. And I want to anchor it good and tight. And I'm going to start to palmer wrap this hackle like you might on a stimulator back to the bend of the hook. And you can see I'm just pushing that piece of foam out of the way as I go. And when I get to the bend, I'm going to pick up my mono and I'm going to come over that hackle stem, and then I'm going to rib forward through the hackle with the monofilament. Now, one of the things I like about this is that really reinforces that stem, and it sort of sinks down in that foam really nicely. And I'll tie that mono off at the front there. Try not to catch my foam too much. Come back around there. Like I say, we're going to fix that here in a minute. That little flippy floppy spot. Tie that mono off, clip that out of there. Got a weird little hackle fiber there. Now I'm going to smooth things off at the front edge of this body. Now I can come in and trim this hackle tip out. So we've just got a nice palmered hackle over that body. Now with my thread right at the front edge of this body, I'm going to take this piece of foam, and I'd like to give it just a little stretch. I'm going to come over with one turn. I want to make sure it's square. I'm going to pull straight down, follow it up with another turn, maybe put a couple more on there. So we just made a little foam back on there, like so. Now for the wing and top part of the thorax, we're going to use a piece of tan foam that's cut just slightly wider than the yellow piece. And you can see I've knocked the corners off the end of that. Now one thing that I like to do to these is I'll take that piece once I've knocked the corners off, and I'll just hit it with the cigarette lighter, and that just sort of rounds those corners up a bit. Again, just makes it clean. So I'm going to lay this piece of foam in just short of the end of the yellow foam, and I'm going to tie it down in the same place. So one turn around and tighten the thread toward me, follow it up with a couple more, and that's going to anchor that right on top. You want to make sure that stays on top of the hook. Now I'm going to take my strip of orange foam. So this is 3mm foam, and I've cut it about 3x3 or 3x2. I get that just square. It looks more rectangular than square. But this is going to be our indicator. So I'm going to lay this on top, and I want the back end to be a little long. So I'm going to lay it about halfway up the wing. I'll put one turn over it, and again, just keep everything square. Pull straight down on the thread, and that's so you're not twisting your foam as you tie it in. If you let your thread roll that, you'll get kind of the corner edge up rather than the square edge up. Now we're going to tie in some legs, and this is Sexi-Floss or Flexi-Floss. Sexi-Floss has got the bars already on it. Flexi-Floss does not, but I can show you how to put bars on it when we're all said and done. So I'm going to take a piece, and I'm going to tie it in here on my near side. So let me turn this a bit. I'll let you see what I'm doing. I'm going to lay it on my near side and catch it right in that tie down with a couple turns. Now you can see that's a little on the high side. It's kind of lined up with the tan foam. I can take that and pull it down here to the yellow foam, like so. And then I'll just take the other end and lay it in on the far side, kind of hold it in place, and catch it with a couple turns. You want to make sure those legs are at least as long as the body right now. And I like to leave this little loop here. I can flip that back out of the way. I can slide that over this piece of foam, and it'll be out of the way during the rest of my tying process. So now I've got that tied down. Now we're almost done. So from here, I'm going to lift up all three pieces of foam here, and I'm going to bring the thread forward all the way up to the hook eye, and then back again. I'm just going to kind of make a thread thorax here. This is one of the cool things I really like about this fly. Is it's not you might be tempted to add something here, some more dubbing or some more hackle, or when realistically you don't need anything. We're just going to color that hook with a few layers of thread, kind of a little taper to it, right up to the base of that foam. Then I'll bring the thread just up to just behind the eye. Now at this point, slide that back out of the way again. I'm going to take both the yellow and the tan and hold it down. And I'm going to cinch it in place just behind the eye. And get 3 or 4 good tight turns on that, like so. Then I'm going to take my orange and hold it down and catch it with a turn or two. Following along, everything making sense. All right, now we're going to throw in another set of legs. And in this case, I'm going to take this single strand and catch it on the near side first. The order in which you tie these in really doesn't make any difference, I guess. I do the near side first because I can see it. And then on the far side, I'll just let that sit high, let my thread catch it, and then I can position that down along that yellow foam, lower on the body, like so. Now I'm going to lift all those pieces of foam up and bring my thread just behind the eye. Just a few turns for a thread head, and I'll whip finish just up behind the hook eye. Trim that thread out. I can cut this loop for these legs. Now that I've got these cut, I can kind of square things up, get my legs in position. This one's super extra long. Now for the front end, I'm going to trim this orange foam down a little shorter. And then the yellow and tan, I'm going to trim straight across about equal distance as this thorax section, maybe just a touch longer. Make sure you don't cut your leg when you do it. I'm going to trim that off square, like so. Now Tim likes to come in and knock these corners off. And I'm not opposed to that. Like so. Now I'm going to leave these legs a little long for right now, just because it's going to make it a little easier to do what I need to do next. But I want to square everything up, make sure I've got everything where I want it. I'm feeling pretty good about that. So now if you want to bar these legs, I'm going to just grab one. I like to leave them long. I'm going to grab one and take a Sharpie marker, and this is just a brown Sharpie. You can see I just roll the tip back and forth across the leg. It takes a little minute to do this to each leg. You can buy these pre-made, but I didn't have any of those sitting on my desk, so truth be told, I do this most of the time. I like my bars better than factory bars anyway, so It's one of the things that's missing in fly tying these days. You can buy everything pre-done, so everyone does, and it takes a little bit of the creativity out of it and the artisticness. But you do whatever you want. I'm not saying they're going to judge you, but I am. So I'm just going to bar all these legs up. Just patiently watch. And the reason I leave these legs long is I can't get too close to the end of my fingers with this marker, or I end up with marker all over my fingers. So I leave them long so I can get them colored, as close to the end that I'm going to end up cutting. I think I moved him out of focus there a little bit. Let's get that back. All right, now we're going to square those legs up again. Just make sure when we colored them, we didn't move them out of place. Then I'm going to come in and trim these off about, I don't know, 2/3 of a shank length long is what they ultimately end up being. Think of what a grasshopper looks like, but look at all those little wiggly legs. And that barring definitely adds some appearance of movement, if not actual movement. They definitely wiggle. But any barring like that, I always think is a good thing. Now, to kind of lock everything down, what we want to do here is we're going to come in with some, I use Solarez bone dry, and I'm going to turn this fly upside down. And on that thorax section, I'm going to run a bead from just behind the hook eye down to the thorax, and I'm going to cover all that thread work. You can kind of smooth that out a bit. And then while I'm in there, I'll put a little shot right there at the bend. And I'll come in with my UV lamp and cook that. You can see there on your side, I got some resin on the hackle. Don't worry about that. When you cook it, it'll come right off. We're going to cook that up. I'm going to rotate this back around, wipe off that resin. You can see on the hackle, if you grab it and pull on it, all that comes off. And that is our finished Tim's hopper. Pretty cool, simple little fly. So many hopper patterns are complicated. And the problem with hoppers is if you're fishing them right, you're throwing them in spots that, there's a good chance that you might drop one off. Might leave one in the bushes. I'm just putting a little resin on these knots, or these tie downs between the legs. Trying to do it without getting too much on there. Give that a little cook. But so many hopper patterns are complicated affairs. This is a pretty simple affair. Great dry dropper fly. Obviously, you could tie it in a ton of different colors, and the two-tone I really like as well. But that is Tim Drummond's hopper. That was a fun little one. Now I've got 8 or 10 of them to throw in my box, which always makes me happy. I end up with so many cool flies at the beginning of the season when I start getting out in the summertime. From doing these videos, I end up with so many cool flies in my box. I just don't know what to fish with. But gosh, I always manage. Persevere, fight your way through. Hey, you guys, thanks for watching. I'm Charlie. You guys take care.